Think about the last 5 years. Do they feel like 5 full years or like a handful of scenes stitched together? Now think about one summer when you were a child. Somehow, 3 months could feel enormous. Adults often describe the same unsettling effect. Birthdays arrive faster, seasons collapse into each other, and entire years seem to vanish. The popular explanation is simple. When you are 10, 1 year is 10% of your life. When you are 50, it is only 2%. But that elegant equation is not the whole story. Your brain does not own one clock. It builds time in at least 2 very different ways. The first is time as you live it. Call it the present clock. If you stare at a loading bar, wait for a delayed train, or sit through an awkward silence, 30 seconds can feel endless. If you're absorbed in a game, a conversation, or a difficult creative task, an hour can disappear. Attention, expectation, alertness, and emotion all change the felt speed of the moment. Researchers call this a passage of time judgment. It is not the same thing as estimating whether a tone lasted 2 seconds or 3. That distinction matters because laboratory results do not support the cartoon version of aging, a physical clock in the brain simply running slower every birthday. In one questionnaire study of 499 people from age 14 to 94, age did predict some reports of time moving faster, but the effects were small to moderate and explained at most 10% of the differences between people. In an everyday experience sampling study, younger and older adults did not differ in how fast time felt as it passed. Emotion and attention to the current activity mattered more. So why does life still seem to accelerate when we look backward? Because the second clock is not really a clock. It is memory. Imagine 2 Saturdays. On the first, you wake up, take a train to a town you have never visited, get lost, find a tiny market, meet someone unexpected, taste a food you cannot name, and watch a storm roll across the station on the way home. On the second, you repeat the same routine you have followed for months. Breakfast, chores, the same screen, the same rooms. Both days contain 24 hours. While you are living them, the busy, unfamiliar day may feel fast. But 1 month later, it often feels larger because your memory can unfold it into more distinct events. This is the paradox at the center of subjective time. A fascinating activity can make time fly now and feel long later. Boredom can make a minute crawl now and leave almost nothing behind later. The present clock and the memory clock can move in opposite directions. The brain does not store experience as one continuous recording. It divides life into events. A door opens. The location changes. A new goal begins. A conversation turns. These event boundaries reset context and help organize what happened before and after. Human recordings from the medial temporal lobe have even identified neurons that respond to abstract boundaries in a narrative, helping transform continuous experience into separate episodes. Recent experiments make the connection to remembered time unusually clear. In a naturalistic study, people watched everyday events divided into smaller sub-events, then estimated their duration immediately and again after 7 days. The number of sub-events they could recall predicted how long the whole event seemed. Remembered structure mattered more than the total number of tiny details. The brain appears to ask something like, "How much happened?" and uses the answer as evidence for how much time must have passed. This does not prove that routine is the only reason years feel shorter. There is no single accepted formula for subjective aging. Biology, attention, emotion, health, stress, culture, and the way a question is asked can all change the result. The familiar fraction of your life theory may contribute to the intuition, but it is a model, not a discovered law of the brain. What the evidence does show is that lived duration and remembered duration are different problems, and memory needs landmarks. Childhood is filled with landmarks by default. First school, First friendship. First trip without your parents. New rules, new bodies, new rooms, new fears, new freedoms. Even an ordinary week can contain several experiences with no older template. Adulthood makes life efficient. We automate the commute, the kitchen, the software, and the social script. Efficiency saves effort, but repeated days share the same mental label. When memory compresses them, 10 similar Mondays can become one generic Monday. So can you slow life down? You cannot manufacture extra minutes, but you can give the memory clock more structure. First, create small novelty, not constant chaos. Take a different route. Learn one unfamiliar skill. Visit a place close enough to ignore, but new enough to require attention. Cook something whose steps you do not know. Novelty is useful because it forces the brain to update its model, but a dramatic vacation once a year is not enough. A small first experience every week creates more boundaries across the calendar. Second, mark transitions. At the end of a workday, walk around the block before going home. Change the lighting when an evening project begins. Put the phone away before dinner. The ritual itself is not magic. It makes one context end and another begin. Event boundary research suggests that context shifts help separate episodes in memory, although too many interruptions can also fracture attention. The goal is meaningful chapters, not endless notification cuts. Third, retrieve the day before it disappears. Write 3 concrete moments each night. Something you saw, something you learned, and something you felt. This is not a scientific guarantee that life will feel longer. It is a practical application of the evidence that retrospective duration depends on accessible event structure. A calendar full of appointments records what was scheduled. A tiny memory log records what actually happened. Fourth, practice attention without demanding excitement. In one experiment, a brief mindfulness exercise caused participants to judge short intervals as longer. Experienced meditators also reported less time pressure and a slower passage of weeks and months, although that comparison cannot prove meditation caused the difference. A recent review of 47 studies concluded that the relationship is complex. Still, the basic lesson is useful. When attention returns to present sensation, time contains more than the next task. Finally, do not confuse a packed schedule with a rich memory. Stress can create many events while destroying your ability to encode them clearly. Endless scrolling can feel busy while producing few meaningful boundaries. That last point is an inference, not a direct law from the studies. The test is simple. At the end of the day, can you name the chapters? Your life is not literally speeding up. The second still lasts a second. What changes is the evidence your brain has available when it reconstructs the journey. A year with few remembered boundaries can collapse into a sentence. A year divided by learning, attention, places, people, and deliberate reflection can reopen into scenes. So try one experiment. For the next 30 days, create one small first each week and write down 3 moments each night. Then look back without checking the calendar. If the month feels wider, you did not slow the universe. You gave your memory more time to find. What should the next video investigate? Why songs get stuck in your head, why crowds make bad decisions, or why your own voice sounds strange in recordings? Choose in the comments.